Hello guys, how are you? I hope you are doing well. So straight to the point, I was just in the Google Scholar searching for some papers regarding heavy metals, and then I came about an article talking about the nuclear waste in Kenya. I was like, wait, nuclear waste were dumped in Kenya, and this was in a period of between 1980s to 1990s. That's the time frame in which it is alleged that these nuclear waste were dumped in Kenya. And for me, someone who is dealing with the research regarding heavy metals or potential toxic elements, it is something of a serious concern. And if it is true that the government of the nuclear waste were dumped in Kenya, then the government of Kenya is mutedly talking about it. To me, it is a serious concern because of the effects of these nuclear waste materials to both the environment and to human being. Now, let's get straight to the point. I want to talk or share my idea or opinion regarding this nuclear waste, and I will try to put or talk in the layman language so that even a farmer in the village who have never heard about this can understand me in the terms of layman language. So when we talk about nuclear waste, we are just talking about the byproducts or the remains of a product made up of a nuclear. Okay, so that's what nuclear waste means in a simple word. In a scientific way, we can define nuclear waste as radioactive elements or particles, and we are going to explain that. So assume that you have used a nuclear weapon, and then that nuclear weapon remain in the area. It's a waste already, so that is a nuclear waste. Now, nuclear wastes are made up of radioactive elements or radioactive materials. And the radioactive elements or materials are, let me explain that. Now, we have element, and the element as a nuclear, right? Nucleus. Within the nucleus, we have protons and neutrons. And most of the time, the nucleus will be in a state of the stability. It will always be stable in the sense that the number of protons and neutrons need to be balanced. But sometimes, due to excess energy within the nucleus or imbalanced protons, neutrons, if they are not balanced, then the nucleus is going to be unstable. Because the nucleus prefer the state of the stability, then it will move from unstable nucleus to a stable nucleus. So during that transition of a nucleus becoming stable from instability, it undergoes what is called a decay. And during this decay, there are particles which are being released. During that transition, there are particles which are being released, and some of them are alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma particles. So alpha particles, their energy is not that strong that it can penetrate our skin, but it is dangerous to human health when we inhale it. Beta particles, yes, the energy is strong and they can penetrate into the skin, but they cannot go deeper far into the tissues of the inside the body, but they are dangerous to human being. But when it comes to gamma rays, those who think of electromagnetic spectrum, gamma rays is the worst and dangerous of all the rays that can be emitted. Gamma rays can enter into our tissues, damage organs, tissues, and everything. Now, the nuclear waste that we have talked about are categorized, and my focus is on the HLW category, which is high level waste category. High level waste category are nuclear waste which spend more time. They have long lifespan, meaning that they can stay for a long period of time in the environment, even more than 20,000 years. They're just still staying there in the environment, still active in the environment. And they are also very, very dangerous. So my focus is on the HLW. So when I heard that nuclear waste were dumped in Kenya, in the northern region part of Kenya in areas like Isiolo, Wajir, Mandera, and Garissa. Okay, so if we look the time frame in which it is alleged that they were dumped there, it's between 1980s to 1990s. So that's like an average of 40 years ago. Now, why was if they were dumped there, then why was this place chosen to be the dumping site of this nuclear waste? Is because of the dangerous or the health concerns of nuclear waste, it needs to be dumped in an area which is less populated, having less animals and less human being. And if we check during that period in Kenya, northeastern part of Kenya was less populated, was very sparsely populated, unlike today. So now, one way in which we can dispose this nuclear waste, especially the HL category, the HLW category, is through excavating or digging a landfill, and then we dump them into that landfill and recover. Okay. And yeah, just to give you an example of those radioactive elements in the periodic table, we can have like uranium, thorium, like that. And they can also be made by human being like a plutonium. If you guys have watched a movie called Air Force One Down, they are talking about that nuclear weapon made of plutonium. Okay, that's a story on its own. Okay, so anyway, now we can dig a land, we can select a land which is less or sparsely populated or having no people, and then we dump this nuclear waste and we cover them. Now, once we have covered them, I want to take you through the sources of this nuclear waste into the environment. Their sources, where do they come from? Number one, they can come from nuclear weapons. They can come from research, agricultural research, or any research which are related to, especially in the field of medicine. And they can also come through natural sources like eruption of mountains can also lead to some of this. Mining, of course, can also result into these nuclear substances into the environment. And one way in which we can dispose them, just like I've said, is through disposal, where we dig the land and we keep them. So now you already know the sources of this nuclear waste. And I want to focus on nuclear weapons, especially from the nuclear reactors, weapons, and so. And if you look at the time frame in which it is alleged that these nuclear waste were dumped in Kenya, it was a period in which the Cold War was coming to an end in the mid 80s and 90s, where the Cold War between USSR or the Soviet and the Western world was coming to an end. So now, once these nuclear waste have been dumped into the environment, the question is, how do they get into the environment, back to the upper part of the environment, or still down there? When you dig that land to dump this nuclear waste, the depth of the hole is a very key important issue. If the hole is shallow, meaning that there's nothing, they can be exposed easily. But if it is deep, then they will take time to be exposed on the surface, but their effects will still be there. So now let's look at how this nuclear waste can get into the environment. Number one, when these nuclear waste are dug and covered inside the hole, it will rain. When it rains, the rain will get into underneath the soil, and it will dissolve this nuclear waste. Once they dissolve in them, then they can go into the into the streams, rivers and lakes, any water body that they will end up in, because now they have been dissolved and they are now in soluble form. Remember, this nuclear waste contain materials like heavy metals or potential toxic elements like cadmium, lead, manganese, nickel, vanadium, zinc, copper, magnesium, mercury, name them. Those are metals or materials which are part of nuclear waste. Now, it means that if these metals are dissolved in water, then I drink this water, I'm going to introduce into my system these metals. So this is how these metals or this nuclear waste can enter into the body of, into the environment or into a human being by consumption of water. Okay. When an animal, a cow or any animal drink this water, the animal is introducing these substances into their body. Then we go and consume and eat this beef or these animals, we're still introducing these metals into our body. And if the fish, there's a fish or aquatic animals which are living in a water which has been affected with this nuclear waste, then we go and eat that fish, for instance, we are going to introduce these heavy metals into our body. Okay. Now, in northeastern part of Kenya, the areas that I've mentioned, it is an area which is dominated by pastoralists. They keep animals like camels, cows, goats, sheep, name them. So now it means that when, and especially during rainy seasons, I know it is a desert area, but sometimes it highly flood in that region to the extent that now some animals are dying, people are being displaced. So that flood can wash away those heavy metals and nuclear waste and then dump them downstreams or wherever they will end up. Okay, they can end up in a lake, a river, stream, and anything. Now, there are vegetation which are growing in this area. Okay, when the vegetation is growing in this area, as they grow up, they accumulate this toxic or this nuclear waste, especially now these heavy metals, in two parts. One, it can accumulate them in the root system, that was through a process we call phytostabilization, whereby these heavy metals are being absorbed and broken down into within the roots. If you plant plants like carrot, sweet potato, Irish potato, yam, cassava, all those tuber crops that we consume, it means that there's a lot of these toxic or potential toxic elements like lead, cadmium, iron, and blah blah into the tubes, and when we eat them, it get inside our body. Sometimes these heavy metals can also be accumulated. They are transported from the root into the shoot part of the plant. When we talk of the shoot part of the plant here, we refer to the stem and the leaves, okay, and even the flower. So let's take into the stem, sugarcane. When you grow sugarcane in an area which has been affected with heavy metals, let's say like that northeastern part of Kenya, then it means that these heavy metals will be accumulated into the stem, and when we eat this sugarcane, we're gonna introduce those heavy metals into our body. And also, these heavy metals can be accumulated into the leaves of the plants. For example, you plant your spinach, your vegetables that we consume their leaves, right? The kales, the spinach, the cabbage, things like that. And then they accumulate through phytoextraction, whereby they are coming into the shoot system. So now they are going to accumulate a lot into the leaves. When I go and eat these leaves, I'm going to introduce toxic or heavy metals into my body system. And this, especially when it comes to vegetation, it comes to vegetables, you find that there are some people who grow vegetables, especially within the cities, Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, Pretoria, wherever. You find that there are people who grow these vegetables next to sewerage, or they take the sewerage water, then pour into their vegetable farm. You are introducing heavy metals to this plant. They will take them and we will be consuming these heavy metals through these plants. Now, those are some of the ways in which we can introduce these potential toxic elements into our body. Also, we said that radioactive elements, through the process of decaying, from moving from unstable to stable state, they emit radiation like the ones that I've talked, like alpha, beta, gamma rays, and that radiation is very dangerous to our human body. If you remember the story of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, may their soul rest in peace, those who lost their lives, the effect of those atomic bombs which were dropped there is still evident until today. If you go to Ukraine, there's a place, I think it's called Chernobyl something. It was a nuclear reactors, things happened there, and the vegetation in that area is not like what you might have expected it to be because of the effects of, because of the radiation effect of the nuclear rays, I'll say that. So now, if you look the northeastern part of Kenya, in this region, it is arid and semi-arid, or it is a desert. Sometimes we may think that it is the effect of the climate change which has made vegetation not to grow properly in this region. But from my assessment and as a researcher on heavy metals to the environment, I can tell you that it could not, another factor that might have contributed to aridity and semi-aridity in this region could be the effect of this nuclear waste that cannot support plant growth or vegetation growth in those areas. So we might be blaming, climate change, but also the effect of these heavy metals in that area that has suppressed the growth of vegetation. Let's look at the effect of this nuclear waste to the environment, and I want you to pay more attention, and there's something I'm going to say after this. Now, one of the effects of these heavy metals is skin cancer. Most of them are carcinogenic, meaning that they causes cancer, so it can be different types of cancer, but radiation, or the rays which are being emitted by this nuclear waste, or is those rays, radiations or rays, they cause skin cancer mostly because we are directly in contact to them. So nuclear waste, heavy metals, they are carcinogenic. We have said they cause issues with the brain, or what we can call neurological disorders. They also cause kidney problems, kidney disorders, tissue damages, or DNA damages, because this toxic exposure to these toxic elements introduce something that is called ROS. I think it is reductive oxygen suppress something, but in short it is called ROS. The acronym is ROS. So what does this ROS do? ROS, it simply suppresses the antioxidants in our body. Okay, so it means that if when it has killed or it has suppressed the antibodies, okay, in our bodies, or antioxidants, it means that their frequent accumulations or long-term accumulation of them will now cannot be fought into our body, because the body has fought them to the extent that our body can no longer fight them anymore. So when they come, they can cause the tissue damages. That is when now DNA get killed or interfered with. And that is why if you check, people are exposed to radiation, such like those nuclear radiation, they have several DNA issues. Now, I want, and I'm requesting the government of Kenya, if it is true that nuclear waste were dumped in the northern part of Kenya, then a proper research and risk assessment, health risk assessment should be done to ensure that people are safe and they are taken good care of by taking through medical checkup. And during that time, between mid 1980s until today is about 40 years. And this is a good time for uh, these heavy metals to show their symptoms and health effect to those who have been exposed to them. Okay, so I will suggest that the people who are living around Isiolo, Garissa, Mandera, and Wajir, or those areas which is alleged to have been the dump sites of nuclear waste, to go to the hospital and check if they are having cancer. Okay, to check if they are having cancer, to check the concentrations of metals like cadmium, chromium, arsenic, lead, copper, zinc, aluminium into their bloodstream, because the period of 40 years is a good time for these heavy metals to show their effects. Okay, and also the animals in that area need to be treated properly, because you find that people living in this area, the animals eat the vegetation, they eat the animal, they take in heavy metals, those nuclear waste. These people drink water, they take in heavy metals. These people grow crops, eat this vegetation, eat these crops, they introduce heavy metals into their body. These people, through radiation, because you cannot see radiation, but you could smell maybe, and yeah, through that you can smell. This is a kind of smell somewhere. For us who have gone to mining underground, there's sometimes when you hit a certain rock, you can feel a certain smell. So through radiation exposure to radiation could have also contributed to this nuclear waste effect into the body. So imagine people living in this area with all those sources of, or those pathways of heavy metals into their system. It has caused tremendous effect. Okay, kidney disorder, neurological disorder, brain disorder, cancer, or DNA problems, death of vegetation, death of cows. And if I don't know, but cows also, animals can also die when they're exposed to them. So I would like people in that region to go and do a proper medical checkup, and if they find that, then they need to sue the government, because how comes the government allowed something like that? Now, you're gonna ask, the current government was not the one which was in place. Fine. But then the source of this nuclear waste must be traced, because for it to be dumped in Kenya, as it is alleged that it was dumped, then it means that the country that came into Kenya should be sued for the damages of these people. Okay, yeah, so there are a lot of ways. So maybe I've talked a lot, but the question is, Bill, what can we do now to avoid further effects? So there are several ways in which we can remediate. In scientific term, we call it remediation of contaminated sites like that. We can either plant trees, and then we can, yeah, the best important for in that case is to plant trees, what we call phytoremediation. And also we can, and not only trees, because not all trees are going to grow there. There are specific species or genus of plants that can grow in such areas. And also to screen water properly before we use it, and also to avoid areas that have been, or that were, quote unquote, dumping site of those nuclear waste. Yes. Oh, thank you so much for watching this. I never I never planned to make this video, but when I was downloading papers for my research, of course, I came across this and I was like, no way, let me talk about this. Actually, I also saw an article in a certain area dumping site, also in a certain area in Trans Nzoia. If you go to Google Scholar, you're gonna find such a letter. And I want to make this clear. this video I've made, I've said and used several terms like it is alleged that nuclear waste were dumped in Kenya. On 30th October 1989, a UN published a report in collaboration with the Kenyan government regarding that issue. There are many information in the internet regarding that. So what I'm saying and this video that I've made is based on the papers that my eyes just found there. So I know how the government work. Please, I'm just a normal guy who is trying to solve the issues that were facing, that the government, I mean the people are facing. Ero kamano. Goodbye. Okay, so today I decided to go to Google and in search of papers, then I just typed Google Scholar. Google, here it appears, Google Scholar. I clicked it, here it is, and then I clicked, so I clicked nuclear waste, waste dumped in Kenya, and then you can see a lot of articles pop up. Okay, let me show you clearly. So these are some of the articles that just popped up when you type the nuclear waste dumped in Kenya. All right, so I don't know from when did they start. Let me custom the range so that we can see from which year. Let me put maybe from 2000, so that you can see if from 2000 to 2026. Then let's search. Yes, so now all the articles say which appears from, I've put it a range from 2000 to 2026. So if you look at all these articles, you see they have, like the first one which appear was published recently, 2023, experiences integrating system safety and sustainability. All of these are articles that have been published based on the nuclear waste which were dumped in Kenya, and there are a lot. Even if I was to click here, let me check the one with high citations. Okay, let's click like this